The Super Smash Bros. Series started as a crossover between many Nintendo properties. However, beginning in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, characters from games made by companies other than Nintendo started to show up as playable characters. Suddenly, the door was open for so many characters to become playable, and to many, these third-party characters are seen as potentially the most hype-inducing additions. Even so, there are still many third-party characters who have yet to become playable. And that's what this list is all about. Be sure to watch the top 10 Nintendo-owned characters I want in Super Smash Bros. If you haven't already, as this video is kind of a continuation of that one. This is the top 10 third-party characters I want in Super Smash Bros. She got her start on a Nintendo platform, her games continue to appear on them, and she's already a Spirit and Mii costume in Smash itself. Shantae has already gotten some recognition from the Smash team, so she's partway there at least. Now we just need her to actually become playable. With a plethora of moves ranging from hair whipping, various items, transformations into animals, and pirate weapons, she could definitely have a fun moveset that takes bits and pieces from each game. Her personality would probably translate into a lot of fun and cute animations. A belly dancer is a fairly unique concept that Smash hasn't really tackled before, and more female fighters are always a positive. Of course, with a new universe has to come new music, and Jake Kaufman's scores for these games are nothing less than phenomenal, so getting any more of those songs in Smash would be absolutely beautiful. With all the support she's gotten, I wouldn't be surprised if Shantae is being considered as a serious contender for the next game, and I will be so pleased if she does make it. We may have all been excited for the Metal Gear series to be returning in Ultimate, but man did that series get the shaft in terms of new content. Sure, there's a decent amount of spirits, but only 3 new music tracks, with 2 of them being remixes of songs that were already in Smash? No new playable characters for the series? For one of the most influential and innovative game series out there, this is kind of embarrassing. Of course, the biggest crime is the utter lack of representation for one of my personal favorite games of all time, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, with only a single spirit representing that game. Who is that one spirit again? Well, that would be Mr. Lightning Bolt himself, Raiden. Now, Raiden actually has already been playable in a platform fighter before, appearing in PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, and his playstyle there was pretty faithful to his gameplay in Metal Gear Rising. Being a superhumanly powerful cyborg ninja, Raiden is insanely quick and efficient, slicing through enemies like butter, and PSASBR shows that really well. I feel like he would play pretty similarly in Smash, not much to say there. Not to mention that Metal Gear Rising continues to endure in the public conscious, as new memes continue to get made about the game nearly a decade after release, even with no re-releases to speak of, and it's still considered one of the greatest action games of all time with one of the sickest video game soundtracks ever made. Honestly, I could see people getting excited for Raiden and Smash just for the memes and music alone, and that's fine, but we also just don't have a lot of ninjas in Smash to speak of, so he would also fit that niche pretty well. And speaking of ninjas, Koei Tecmo is one of the few major third-party companies that still doesn't have any major representation in Smash. Outside of some spirits and an assist trophy, they have nothing in the way of playable representation. Considering the other big third-party NES platformer series have playable representation in Smash, I think it's only fitting that the Koei Tecmo character to become playable should be their own platforming NES character, the Dragon Ninja himself, Ryu Hayabusa. With 2 well-known trilogies of games, as well as appearing in the Dead or Alive series, Hayabusa is both recognizable to multiple generations of gamers, and has more than enough of an arsenal of potential moves to pull from. Both of his major outfits are iconic enough to serve as proper outfits, and similar to Raiden, he'd fill the niche of playable ninjas in Smash. Sure, there's the issue of there already being a playable Ryu, but there's also 2 playable Roys, so it should be fine. Ninja Gaiden is a series that absolutely deserves recognition in Smash, and it's utterly baffling that it hasn't yet, so here's hoping he gets in sooner than later. He's the first assist trophy on this list, and he's not going to be the last. Zero is one of the most popular characters in the Mega Man series, and it's not hard to see why. His beam saber, cool personality, and contrasting appearance from X have come together to make him a beloved and iconic character, to the point that he became an alternate playable character in the Mega Man X series, got his own spin-off series, and has become playable in Marvel vs. Capcom. Even taking just his playable appearances in the X series and his assist trophy, Zero has plenty of moveset potential that could translate into a fun sword fighter character. Sure, Mega Man is probably the third-party series with the best representation in Smash already, but more characters from such a series certainly couldn't hurt. The past couple Smash games have been paying a lot of respect to the fighting game genre, with playable characters from multiple long-running series and plenty of music. However, the fighting games that have been represented are all of Japanese origin. Now, this does make sense, what with Smash being developed by a Japanese team, meaning they'd likely be more familiar with Japanese-developed games in general, but that approach unfairly limits the range of options available for the genre. While there may not be very many Western-developed fighting game series that can stack up to the likes of Street Fighter and Tekken, one in particular has managed to maintain its popularity since the 90s, and is regularly considered to be on the same level as Street Fighter in the eyes of Western fighting game fans. Of course, I'm talking about Mortal Kombat, and who better to represent the series than its longtime mascot, Scorpion. Being from a 2D fighting game series like Ryu, Ken, and Terry, I could see Scorpion sharing similar mechanics, like command inputs for specials, and automatically facing the opponent during 1v1s. There are plenty of costumes to pull from for alts, though I feel like he'd probably have his MK2 or UMK3 appearance, considering how the Smash team generally adheres to fighting game characters' earlier appearances. He has plenty of special moves to pull from, like his teleport, takedown, and of course the iconic spear. His final smash would probably be a slightly sanitized version of the Toasty fatality. Yeah, being from an M-rated series means he would have to be toned down, but it's worked fine for Bayonetta, and despite Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe's faults, it shows that you can definitely tone down the Mortal Kombat cast for a younger audience and make it work to an extent. Regardless, there isn't enough representation for Western-developed games in Smash, and including the most iconic Western fighting game character would be a great way to step further into getting more of that kind of representation. Back when characters were still being revealed for Ultimate, lots of people said that Sans from Undertale should be playable. I thought it was just a meme, as pretty much anything with the funny skeleton is, but sure enough, he actually got in as a Mii costume alongside a whole new remix of Megalovania. I was utterly flabbergasted at the time, but it does make sense for such a well-known game to get some kind of representation in Smash, especially with it being ported to the 3 major consoles. However, despite Sans being the most iconic character in the game by far, he's not the protagonist, and when a new series gets introduced into Smash, it's typically the protagonist that becomes playable before anyone else. Therefore, it only makes sense to me that if we were to get a playable Undertale character, it would have to be the human child. You may think that since we don't actually see the child in battle, they wouldn't have much moveset potential, but I actually think they could be a pretty unique fighter. You collect a plethora of weapons throughout Undertale, which could all be used as normals. The different soul colors with their abilities could have some sort of use as special moves, and there could probably be a gimmick tying into LV, making you stronger as you deal more damage and KOs until you reach max LV. Their alternate costumes could even reference other characters from Undertale, and probably Deltarune as well. Honestly though, the main reason I want the human child in Smash is to get more of that borderline auditory porn that is Toby Fox's music in Smash. With the game being so well known and iconic, and Toby himself seeming to have a good ongoing relationship with Nintendo, I could see this happening sooner or later. Sonic the Hedgehog is perhaps the single most iconic video game series aside from Mario and Pac-Man. Many of us popped off when Sonic himself was finally able to cross over with his longtime rival by making it into Smash Bros, but multiple games and nearly a decade and a half later, the magic has kinda worn off. That's not helped by the fact that the Sonic series in general has gotten shafted in terms of content, with Ultimate in particular only adding 3 new music tracks, and no new playable characters being added despite the plethora of options. In particular, Ultimate's emphasis on Echo Fighters got some of us hopeful that a certain edgy boy would get some limelight beyond his longtime assist trophy status, but somehow it just wasn't meant to be. I seriously still don't understand how Shadow the Hedgehog hasn't become playable. I'll admit that other characters like Tails or Dr. Eggman would probably make for more unique representation for the Sonic series, but Shadow is my favorite Sonic character, so I just want him more. He doesn't even necessarily need to be a full-on Echo Fighter, considering he's shown off plenty of different moves from Sonic in both cutscenes and gameplay. I could even see him using some of the weapons and abilities from his own game, like the Guns, Motorcycle, Chaos Spear, and Chaos Blast as a final smash, rather than aping Sonic's frankly lame Supersonic final smash. Shadow himself becoming playable would probably also mean that music tracks associated with him, like Radical Highway, Westopolis, and I Am All of Me, could be added alongside him. So if nothing else, him becoming playable would likely mean more banger Sonic music, and that's always a positive. Shovel Knight is pretty much the modern indie gaming icon, with a smash hit original game available on everything, some spin-offs, and cameo appearances in several other games, including Smash as an assist trophy and Spirit. His skill set is inspired by many classic NES titles, but with his own twists that serve to make him unique. Sure, he probably wouldn't be too different from a sword fighter if he became playable, but Rivals of Aether got him to work well and could serve as a decent base to work off of. Also, as with Shantae, his game's music is a beautiful score made by the incredible Jake Kaufman, and it's kind of a sin that none of that music made it into Smash alongside Shovel Knight's admittedly minor appearance already. Seriously, a character this iconic absolutely deserves to be playable in Smash, and the fact that he's already an assist trophy means he's closer than most indie characters to actually making it. So here's hoping he digs his way into the next installment's playable roster. Doom is the series that popularized the first-person shooter genre, leading to it becoming perhaps the most prevalent video game genre in the West. And even the more recent games in the series have been highly acclaimed in their own right. With an SNES port of the original game, an entry in the series that started as an N64 exclusive, and all of the games currently being available on the Switch, it's also a series with notable ties to Nintendo history. With that in mind, it only makes sense that the protagonist of this series would be considered as a viable candidate for inclusion in Smash. Doomslayer, or Doom Guy if that's more your jam, may already be available as a Mii costume, but being a funny little guy using the dinky-ass pistol just isn't cool or in character for someone who could easily be described as a living hurricane of rage and destruction. At some point, he needs to truly become playable in Smash. Obviously, Doomslayer would need to be toned down significantly to become playable in Smash. After all, we can't exactly have him performing glory kills on Mario and Link, now can we? I could see him still using hand-to-hand for a few normals and throws, but his playstyle would have to be about constant mobility and ranged attacks. The meat hook from Eternal could make for a fun tether recovery. He could use various weapons for different ranged attacks similar to Mega Man and Mii Gunner, and the chainsaw would have to make some kind of appearance. The BFG seems like the obvious choice for a final Smash, but I'm really not sure if they could even allude to its real name due to ratings issues, so the Crucible would probably make for a decent backup. And of course, we've got to get as much of that bangin' music in Smash as possible. Doomslayer needs to rip and tear his way into Smash, and I hope it happens sooner rather than later. Before I give my number one pick, here are some honorable mentions. Dr. Eggman from Sonic, Chun-Li from Street Fighter, Alucard from Castlevania, Crash Bandicoot from Crash Bandicoot, Rayman from Rayman, Travis Touchdown from No More Heroes, Nightmare from Soul Calibur, Leon Kennedy from Resident Evil, Ragna the Blood Edge from BlazBlue, Neku Sakuraba from The World Ends With You, Kazuma Kiryu from Yakuza, and Hat Kid from A Hat in Time. Bayonetta may be the queen of character action games, but her precursor is more iconic, has a longer lasting legacy, and his series has been making a comeback over the past few years. All hail the king of character action games, Dante from Devil May Cry.
Glad I got your attention. I was beginning to feel a little ignored.
You would think that a character that has so much going for him would be a no-brainer to include in Smash as a fully playable character. He has far more than enough moves and weapons to make a viable moveset from. He's appeared in crossovers and other games before. His personality is loads of fun. Both his English and Japanese voice actors already voice characters in Smash. His games became available on Switch after the director of the Devil May Cry series said that they would likely have to come to Nintendo platforms before he could see Dante getting into Smash. And despite being from an M-rated series, he wouldn't even need to be toned down that much. Yet despite having so much going for him, alongside fervent fan support, Dante was merely relegated to the frankly disappointing and infuriating status of Mii Fighter costume, one of the ultimate gaming sins of the past few years.
What the hell is this?
It would be amazing to see the actual characters of Dante and Bayonetta finally meet, and Smash would be a great opportunity to realize that, while also just recognizing both one of the greatest and most iconic action game series and its amazing protagonists. Hopefully this will be a similar situation to Chrom or King K. Rool, and Dante will get in next time. And when he does, it'll be a party worth getting crazy over. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the list. Remember that this is my personal opinion. Any characters you want in Smash that didn't make the list are still valid picks. Maybe comment down below to tell me the third-party characters that you want in Smash, or maybe tell me some other stuff you'd like me to make top 10s about. Subscribe to see future videos, like and share to help me get YouTube good boy points. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.